So a couple of years ago, I got a call about a church gig on a Sunday night. Nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, this was a spot that I had played at numerous times before, and it was looking like we were going to be doing some pretty basic worship music, stuff that I felt like I knew like the back of my hand, except they told me there was going to be one small little twist. The intro we were going to be doing was slightly different than what we usually did. Now, I really thought nothing of it. I had been doing this for years, and it's not necessarily the most technically complex style of music. I probably don't even need to worry about it. I mean, the only thing I'll really be worrying about is like what gear I have to put together for the gig, right? I could go with my classic go-to telly, something that I knew would be safe enough for the genre of worship, but also versatile enough for the more upbeat intro that we were doing that day. For some reason, I was feeling really edgy, and not just regular edgy. I'm talking early 2000s emo kid. For some reason feels like he needs to experiment with a new sound. And I hadn't ever seen it done before in this sort of genre, but I wanted to bring a guitar that I had never actually gigged with. Just a slight bit of risk, but the Les Paul Jr. felt like it was really calling to me to experiment with. Now, I hadn't had the Les Paul Jr. for a long time, but I was definitely starting to grow a real fondness for the guitar, especially when it came to pushing it to the limits in terms of versatility when it came to things like the volume knob. And what better way to learn to embrace that sort of thing than to take it to the type of gig where I really didn't see Les Paul Jr.'s. So I took it out of the case after learning all the parts I needed to for the day, threw it in the trunk of my car, and then just headed to the gig. And I was really excited. Like I said, I had never heard anyone in this context of the worship world use a guitar like this. And so once I plugged in and I got ready to go, I was like, ooh, once I hear this coming back through my in-ears, everything's going to be different because this is going to be my sound like from now on. And that's when the countdown started for the metronome that was going to begin the rehearsal. And so I adjusted my volume knob accordingly, and I was getting ready to play that new introduction part that we had never done before. And right as it was my time, I pressed my hands on the fretboard, I dug into the strings, and instantly I could tell that everything, and I mean everything, was just wrong. The gain was way too hot for the bridge pickup P90 style of approach, and when I would turn the volume down, it would get to the point where it was so thin that it was almost inappropriate for what we were going for the genre. Really, in that moment, what I probably needed was the 4th or 5th position of a Strat, but at the gig, there was absolutely no time to think about what I should have done or what gear I should have brought. I just kind of had to make best use of what I had. And I did my best with what I had in that moment, like anyone else would do, but it became very clear to me that a Les Paul Jr. probably wasn't the best choice for some softer worship music of that caliber. But even with that in mind, something kind of funny actually came to me. Even with as horribly as I thought that particular set went for me tonally that day, it in no way diminished or lessened what I felt about the Les Paul Jr. as a whole. I still really love the P90 sound, specifically for rock, or even for a lot of the bigger moments that I had that day in terms of lead lines. It's just that I really felt like I missed the warmth and the subtlety of having a neck pickup. And that's when I realized something, and I had this sort of epiphany when it came to Les Pauls, that I actually preferred P90s as opposed to the traditional humbucker. And I even got to test that theory when I got this Sire that was LP style with P90s that I really loved, but I never got to see what it was like with an actual Gibson. I didn't even really know where to start. I mean, I was thinking maybe I could go with one of the Les Paul specials, like one of the yellow ones that the punk guys are really known for using. Maybe I could even go with one of the double cuts, but that didn't even really feel like my speed. And right as I was getting ready to figure out where I was gonna have to compromise, it instantly hit me, and I knew exactly which one I wanted to get my hands on. I did not envision myself saying this for a long time, but it is Les Paul Day. I hope you're ready, because I can certainly tell you that I am.
Whoo, okay.
So it's definitely heavy, but that's exactly what I expected when I was like, I'm getting a Les Paul. And it didn't come with the pickup selector screwed on, so I'm gonna have to find that and screw that on. It's pretty much like I said, this is what I expected with the Les Paul. I think the bigger question is gonna be like with P90s, how is that gonna fit how I interpret the Les Paul sound when it's on an actual Gibson? So this right here, ladies and gentlemen, is my 50s Les Paul Standard with P90. So here's the thing. I'm well aware that the name Gibson holds a lot of weight in the guitar world, and with a lot of that weight comes expectations. And I think the best part about being a relatively young guitar player who's really only owned lower end Gibsons on the price spectrum, with what the prices are right now, I don't even know if you could call them lower end, is that I don't necessarily have a lot of those expectations when it comes to this going in. So what was really cool first taking this thing out of the box was that I wasn't necessarily really worried about the 50s necks being chunkier than the 60s necks, or which pots were better from what decade. I was just like, how is this thing actually going to sound? So in like 90% of cases over the past couple months, I've been using either the JC120 or the Tone King with a Royer, but I wanted to switch it up just a little bit today. Pulled out the Archon 50 for the first time in like a year, and you just got to trust me with this. For a lot of the modern cleans, I like what it was doing with the Les Paul sound, so let's give it a shot. So this definitely wasn't my first experience when it came to playing P90s or soap bar style pickups. I've been playing the Jazzmaster for a year, like we were talking about earlier with the Les Paul Jr., and even this Bound Wingman, which is an offset kind of like the Jazzmaster, was probably my most used live gigging guitar for the past year or two. But the thing is, when it came to playing Les Pauls and getting more familiar with them, the most recent Les Paul that I had played was actually my friend's Murphy Lab with two really dark humbuckers. So much so that when I started playing through this and the Rhythm P90, it was like it really did feel like that halfway point between the more traditional, really dark Les Pauls and a lot of the single coils that I've been playing more recently. The other thing that really surprised me about this guitar is actually a concept that I brought from the Les Paul Jr. that I didn't really start to employ until I got to the middle pickup, and that's that I think the best clean tones that come out of a Les Paul aren't necessarily when it's dimed on the volume knob, which is a lesson that I'm trying to learn over and over and over again, especially coming from using an amp like the Archon 50, which is a really modern clean that was breaking up just a little too much. Once I backed off the volume knob a little bit, it was night and day, and I was like, this is perfect. Now, specifically when it comes to the treble pickup on a Les Paul, it's usually pretty straightforward for me. That's the point where I grab the Tube Screamer, the DS1, crank the drive, crank the gain on those bad boys, and really see what this thing can do. But for some reason, this was a little bit different. I wanted to see what the clean tone was really like in the treble position and really embrace that for the first time without going straight to the classic rock AC/DC thing. But of course, eventually I started to crank the gain to really see what this thing could do, to see how Les Paul's Les Paul. And interestingly enough, no pedals, straight into the amp, and it was like, okay, this is what a Les Paul is for. So at the end of the day, what did we learn? What's the moral of this story? And I think all of this is to say, as someone who has owned many a Les Paul over the years, usually a gold top, and ended up getting rid of them very quickly, whether it's to return them back to the store or to sell them really quickly and turn them around for an amp that I didn't need in the first place, I think this might be actually the one that sticks. And most of that is due to just the pickup configuration being different. I really do like P90s in a Les Paul. The Les Paul Jr. taught me that, and I'm really satisfied knowing that I have the P90 thing in the bridge, but I also have it in the neck pickup. I think it works for a Les Paul. And I think saying all that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm blind to some of the drawbacks. This is a very heavy guitar, and the G string does go out of tune sometimes, but I think all of the positives so far outweigh the negatives when it comes to finding a Les Paul that I finally think I really vibe with, that I think will really last me the long term. But at the end of the day, I don't think it matters what I think. What matters is what you think. So please let me know. Do you like this and think this is the absolute standard and has been for like 60 or 70 years? Or do you think that these are guitars that boomers can't let go of because they can't let go of the standards from like the 50s and 60s and move on? I need to know what you think. Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I hadn't made a Gibson video in almost a year, and I've made like 3 straight. So trust me, we're gonna be making some changes soon, but I thought the Les Paul, this was a big thing in my guitar playing journey that I wanted to talk about. But if you wanna know anything more about the Les Paul 50 Standard, I got it from the homies at Sweetwater. The links are in the description. Make sure to check it out. One of the best ways to support the channel, if that's something you want to do, or if you're just curious about any of the other gear that I used in this video, guitars, amps, pedals, make sure to check out those links. Thank you so much to all my patrons. There's some extra exclusive content on there. Like and subscribe if you had a good time, and most importantly, like most important of all, am I a boomer now because I like Les Pauls? Have a great night.